loneliness, the feeling that you have no one. You are all by yourself. Sometimes I like being alone, but there's a difference between being alone and being lonely. Lonely is that like guttural feeling of just kind of emptiness. You don't have anything going on. There's social loneliness. There's probably emotional loneliness too. It's a really kind of dark place to be, but we're choosing to talk about it today because I think virtually everyone in their lifetime has felt this feeling of loneliness, be it in a relationship, in friendships, lack thereof, so on and so forth. This is Coffee and Catastrophe with Brent and Gabi.
Oh, that's such a familiar feeling.
Loneliness?
Oh, God, yeah.
How do you feel lonely, or what do you feel lonely about?
I feel like I'm a foreigner. Like, not, someone from outside of the country coming to the United States type foreigner, but mainly I'm walking around and I'm speaking a language that nobody understands or gets.
I do feel that way when I'm at, like, work, for example. Like, I don't want to say, like, I feel lonely because I really love the people I work with. But that being said, like, there's times where I really think that, like, my interests and, like, what I'm about is very different to the people that are around me. Like, I'm really focused on, like, being successful in this podcast and in my music and, like, in my art or whatever. And when I'm at work, I'm just around people who, like, their big thing in life is, like, their families. And since I'm not married, I don't have, like, a family, it's, like, weird. Like, they don't understand, like, I just feel like I can never talk about, like, what I do outside of school.
I do feel the same way. Especially when I'm at work too, even though I try to be myself as much as I can. So I'll give you an example. At my warehouse job, what we do is we do this process called rebagging. And we have these like mesh bags that are 3 feet tall that we stick in the cubicles. And there's like hundreds and hundreds of them throughout the facility. And it takes a while to put them back into the little cubicles. So what we do is as a group, we, work together, we zip open the bags, and we just all like have this conveyor belt thing going. And at the end, what we've been doing is we've been shouting random words. So for instance, like we pick words. So I don't know, none of them make any sense. We used to start shouting like the manager's name, and then we started shouting like sweaty donuts, like little inside jokes. And then I remember, yesterday we were rebagging and I'm like, hey, can we shout poop soup next? And people were like, no, we can't do that, Brett.
No, that's too far. Too far.
There was one coworker that was like, actually, I like that. Let's do it. And because she said that, we shouted poop soup. And, like I was dying laughing on the inside, but everyone was like, oh my God, what do you mean poop soup? And,
Did you have to explain what poop soup is?
No. That's just what I wanted to shout from my heart in celebration.
My heart wanted to shout poop soup. I haven't been there, but yeah. Have you ever felt lonely? Like, well, I guess it's the same thing. I was like, have you felt like lonely in a relationship? And I don't mean just like romantic. I mean like friendships. And I mean like, yeah, I don't think I've ever felt that. Like, have you felt lonely in a friendship?
With my close friends, no, because there's usually a part of myself that I share exclusively with that friend. So, for instance, like I'd probably feel lonely if I talked about video games with you in depth, like I do with some of my other friends. So if I were to talk about like this video game called Neo, where you play this, samurai and you're going through feudal Japan, and it's a really hard game. And whenever you kill they're called the yokai, which is pretty much like the ancestors of the dead, who are just manifested out of anger and bitterness and resentment. And
that sounds so cool.
And they're overtaking Japan. So when you kill them, like you absorb their souls. It's called Amrita. So, and you go through there and, you level up. So, but if you die, your soul, like wherever that spot you died, like your guardian spirit is there with all the souls you absorb. So if you don't go get that back, then you lose all of like your progress. So it's really frustrating, really hard, but it's really fun and really rewarding.
That sounds really cool. The thing is like, but like I can engage in like stuff like video games because like while I don't play them, I love like the art of storytelling. And I remember telling my friend Juan that like video games are the new choose your own adventure novel. Like they are so cool in that way that you can like You know, especially with games like massive RPGs like Skyrim, or the Elder Scrolls series, like those are amazing because you can like make so many choices. Or like The Witcher, same thing. Like you have to make choices and decide things and like what you're going to do and you don't know the outcome of it and stuff like that. So I can like engage with them on a like a theoretical like talking basis, but like, yeah, I would have nothing to offer. Like, I'm pretty good at a pinball machine. Like, that's all I can... And that's not even a video game. That's, like, fucking physics.
Right. But if I were to, like, talk about more of the nuance... So, for instance, Neo is very much like the Dark Souls series.
I'm very familiar with Dark Souls because of my brother.
Dark Souls and Demon Souls and Bloodborne and...
Yes, I'm familiar with all of those through my brother. Love you.
All right.
He doesn't listen to this podcast. He made a point to tell me that he does not... And he never will.
See, but I actually appreciate his honesty as opposed to like, yeah, I listened to that one episode about
that's true.
That one up, you know.
That's true. Or like I've had people in my life be like, oh yeah, I've completely forgotten to listen to that. I'm like, that's totally fine. Like the way, and we've talked about this before, the way this podcast usually works is like, there's a topic that people gravitate to and they listen to that. And then that kind of snowballs into our listening audience. I don't know if there is anyone except for our like hardcore people who like listen to every single thing we have to say.
I only know maybe 2 people that listen to every single episode, but other than that,
and they're the real MVPs.
They're the real MVPs where they start to get the nuances in the canon. So now I'm perplexed because I'm trying to think of a topic where I can talk about with you that you would be not only bored but not engaged. Because I thought video games might have been it, but
if you like could speak at length about like quantum mechanics or physics, I'd probably tune out. Like that's what. Even then, you know what? This is not my problem, but like a part of my being is I love learning. So like that's okay to me.
That's very interesting. So do you think when you're with somebody who is willing to learn and understand, is it possible for that person to, feel lonely in the sense to where you're at least putting in the effort to learn?
But you know what? There's a line. Like, if you want to teach me, like, if it's like every time we hang out, you have to explain something to me or teach me something, I'm going to get bored real fast. Like, I'm not going to have a good time. So I think there's gives and takes with it. There's like push and pull. Yeah. Yeah.
So, I'm really trying to think now. I've never really felt I felt misunderstood in a few friendships temporarily, but not long term, where I would preserve the friendship based on like something that's not working. I don't know. I like to think of myself, I don't know if I've mentioned this before on the podcast on an earlier episode, but I like to think of myself as tofu. So it's like whoever I'm cooked with, like if like just by myself, I'm completely different than when I'm with somebody else, which is why it's always interesting when I see my friends meet each other because it's like they're completely different people.
It's funny you say that. I don't know if I am tofu. I think that there's definitely an aspect of us that's all tofu. Like when you're with these people, it's code switching. When you're with these people, you act or can talk about certain things. And when you're with a different group of people, it's different. Like last night I was out with my friends. We're all teachers. We are all, in the early stages of our careers, like under 5 years in our positions. Oh, except one of us was a school psychologist, but we all work in schools. And when we're together, we're all in our mid-20s. We can all talk about like things and that revolve around those areas. But if I was with like my core like best friends, we'll be talking about completely different things because like no one else is a teacher, so why would it make sense for us to talk about teaching or the school system and why it fucking sucks or stuff like that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do have that. Especially at work. I'm really taking a personal inventory of like my life. I'm on that first step just through this conversation.
Yeah.
Because I'm really trying to think of what loneliness really is. So I'm thinking like I still feel lonely all the time, despite being fulfilled like within my friendships.
Okay.
So
what does the loneliness feel like?
Oh my God. It's really hard to explain because is there some like way we can like talk about that feeling? Like what does it feel like? Off the cuff, I can possibly say it's optimistic emptiness.
Optimistic emptiness.
So, for instance, it's not necessarily like, because if it was despair and emptiness, I would say that's closer to depression. Mm-hmm. But lonely because you have a longing.
Yeah. Longing is totally a part of loneliness.
Yeah, because when you have like depression, there's no hope. Like you don't care about anything. But when you're lonely, you do, and you're not getting it.
Yes.
You know, especially when it comes to interpersonal relationships. So I couldn't really feel lonely not having like a nice pillow to sleep on at night. But I would feel annoyed and I'd feel uncomfortable, you know, if it's with my neck and stuff. But that's not lonely. So I guess it's just probably finding a way to be understood. And I've met some people, like I used to think I was lonely. I've met some people, I'm like, holy shit, these are the most loneliest people. Like, like the saddest possible stories. And, but you could see like how people get there, you know, what do you have to say? Because like I'm just kind of I don't really know what to say right now.
I've totally felt lonely like in relationships before, like romantic relationships of like you're with a person but you are kind of going in different directions, like emotionally, lifespan wise, like direction of being, like, and you feel like you have this person next to you but they're going in a different way and you sense that. Like, it's very, it just feels like different. Or like, I've gone on like dates before where like I'm talking to this person, but really I'm like, there's no like connection or meaning to this. And like, it's not gonna pan out or anything. And like feeling that way, or like, if you have like an emotion or a feeling about this person that you like can't express, like, then you feel lonely because you're like just sitting in your feelings of like, oh, I don't really like you, or like, oh, I don't like it when you said this, or like, so I felt like that before, like periodically. So yeah, and like I will admit, like sometimes it feels, like I said, going back to the working relationship I have is probably like the biggest one. It's like I love the people I work with, but only I think one person in my department knows that, or two people know that, like I of the 16 people that I like am actively pursuing music and that I have this podcast, and like I keep that really safeguarded because on the one hand it's kind of self-preservation because, you know, the people I work with are like 10 years older than me. They've all got kids and are married. Like, they're not gonna like kind of be able to relate because they don't have like, they're not pursuing creative endeavors on the side. They're busy like making the next generation of humans not suck. Like, that's what they're focused on. And so I am like, well, I'm, you know, I'm single. I don't have anything really to come home to at night other than my art, my craft, and what I'm trying to do like there. So it doesn't make sense for me to talk to them about it. And also it's like, I don't want people finding it out and then like they use it against me, because like the music I made is really like volatile and raw and like powerful, but it's like not necessarily like, I don't want my students hearing it because it's like my baby, you know what I mean? Or like, this is like, I feel free to talk about like whatever here, like on this podcast, and like a part of me is worried that they'd hear something on it and like judge me or like not be able to get it or something like that. Which might be an irrational fear. They might think it's really cool. But yeah, that's kind of where I stand on it. I think the biggest sense of loneliness I get is from that. And like, cause I don't feel romantically lonely cause I'm like in a space where I'm dating, and I don't feel lonely in that necessarily because I have a really good idea of like what I want and where things are going, and like, so I don't really feel lonely there. I think my loneliness comes from like the work stuff.
I gotcha. I would say my loneliness comes from the romantic stuff.
Yeah.
Definitely. I can understand why. I usually find myself in a position to where that is the only part of myself that hasn't been expressed to its full potential.
Okay.
You know, so everything else, like, I connect with the people and the things that I love with humor. Mm-hmm. So my worst enemies are the very literal minded, like the very like sciencey types, very dry, like no sense of humor, because I can't reach them and break common ground. But, you know, at work, I'm really glad to be part of a group of just goofballs. Like at my warehouse job, like everybody is like wacky in a certain way. And even if like the most normal ones or the most successful ones, they still have a very good sense of humor and they could, dish it out as much as they can take it. So that's really freeing.
It's like when Adam Driver describes his experience in the Marines, he said like he didn't anticipate he'd become part of a family of just like all these weird fucking dudes with their like weird idiosyncrasies and like they're just fucking weirdos. And like that's being in the Marines. And, like everyone's fucking weird, but you all relate because you're all fucking weird.
Yeah, dude. And like just like, thinking, like examining like how I behave around like my friends, I couldn't, like just the way I say good morning to some friends is would probably end friendships with other friends the way I say good morning. So,
what's up, you fucking asshole? Something like that?
Worse.
Oh, okay, cool, awesome.
So
better.
So like for instance, I couldn't like text you in the morning like, hey Gabby, how's that fat fucking cock doing this morning?
Yeah, I would not be okay with that. I also don't have a fat fucking cock, so
yeah, or I really couldn't say like, hey Gabby, let's go hang out sometime and eat embarrassing food and then like show our genitalia to woodland animals.
What the fuck?
But the friends that I say that to get it.
Well,
they know what I'm talking about.
That's like the amazingness of friendship is that like, okay, so like my like group chat of my friends, it's called Bad Chiefki, which is, if you speak Polish, it means bad like pussies. And like, that's like, we can call each other like that. Not really. We don't call each other like bitch or pussy. It's only like the title of, or like, I'll call us like bad bitches at times, but that's like funny. Like if I said like, what's up bad bitches? Like they'd be like, no, it's just Gabby. Oh, that's the name of our group chat.
See, when I say that to certain friends though, it's not that I was longing to say that. It's just, that's what it has become. And now there's no looking back.
See, when you started, I thought it was like, so my dad and I are really weird in that we don't like say hello and goodbye or I love you normally. Like, I think my father and I might have some like weird, like, how do I say this and not sound like I have so much baggage? I think my dad and I have this weird thing where like, I can't be like, Dad, I love you. It has to be said in like a fucking voice, like an accent. Like I'd come down for breakfast in the morning and he'd be like, Gabby! And I'd be like, Dad! This is like high-pitched squeaky thing. And like, he'd be like, good night, Gabby. I'm like, good night, Dad, I love you. He's like, I love you too. I don't know why it happens.
So you've never been able to just say like,
Dad, I love you.
like Papa, thank you for being a good Papa. And then he's like, thank you for being a good dada or daughter.
I can't call him Papa because that was my grandfather's like nickname. Yeah, no, I've never been able. I'm sure like when I ever get married and like on my wedding day, I'll be like, Dad, I love you. And he'll be like, and then my dad will be like, I love you too, Gabby.
So, I get what you're saying. Like, I'm kind of like that with my mom. Like, I could speak with my mom in like accents, and she was the first person I ever did like a Italian accent for. And she was just, I'm just like, hey, what the fuck are you doing over there? Huh? And she's like, hey, get out of here, And I was like, you know something? I fucking love you. I turn into Tony Soprano. I'm like, hey, where's Carmela? I'm tired of this fucking shit. Where's Carmela?
That's a really good Tony Soprano.
I got quite a few going on, but I pretty much test out all of my voices like with my mom, and it's fine. I don't do that on my dad. Like, hey, Dad, how the fuck you doing? He's just, hi. But I could just go up to my dad and say, hey, Dad, Jews. And then he's like, yeah, son. Oh
my God.
So it's like a different way that we connect.
Sometimes the person I'm dating and I will like, make a Slavic, like noise, and we'll talk to each other like we're Slavs. Like we talk about like, the Slavic squat. Like we don't have lawn furniture. We sit outside and we squat and we smoke cigarettes, and then we'll do that like back and forth at each other, which is probably really fucking gross to hear. But yeah.
Oh, yeah. So I think it's because it's not necessarily that you want to use your Slavic accent in the world, but the fact that you're able to just unwind with somebody and have fun, and it's like kind of like a form of play.
Yeah, just be like stupid. Just be like fucking like a dork. Like sometimes that's really fucking fun and like what I need. Sometimes it fucking drives me insane though.
Yeah. Oh shit. But the loneliness still persists, and like, what is it? I think now that we're talking about it, it's probably just because at least we all have these like feelings, right? And all these feelings have words to them.
Yes.
But a lot of people don't have the words attributed to what the feeling is, but you want to express it. So how do you express something when you don't know the language? So I think that's where the foreigner aspect comes in, because I wish that there were, because even at work, like I'm still shouting poop soup. They don't know like the stuff that I do in the spare time. They don't know what I do for volunteering.
That's true.
They don't know any of like my ideas or beliefs. I mean, pretty much at work, I have it to where I'm so extreme on both sides to where they don't know what I believe in. And I'm actually fine with that. But
I actually had a moment and just realized, like, I don't think there's a person in this world that could ever know you and how multifaceted you are like you do. Like, is there always going to be an element of loneliness with interpersonal relationships because you can't fully ever know a person like that?
It's kind of, I do agree. It's kind of like so for instance, there's never going to be a restaurant that literally has every single thing that you like. So you have to shop around. So for instance, I go to Orlando's and Round Lake because I love their salads and I love their pizzas. They don't have hot dogs.
They do not have hot dogs.
There's no hot dogs.
Pizza places shouldn't have hot dogs. I know this from working at a pizza place.
Right. But if I wanted to go to a good hot dog place, I go to Portillo's. And they have some badass.
You said Portillo's instead of Sammy's. You don't like Sammy's?
Well, I mean, I'm just throwing it out there because
okay.
Sammy's is at least more. Actually, Orlando's is probably more underground than Sammy's. But yeah, so even Sammy's, or like if you want a gyro, you wouldn't go to KFC.
No, don't go to KFC for a gyro. I don't even think they have that on the menu.
No.
You know what? That's a really good lesson in like expectations. And like, if you want X, don't go to the purveyor of Y. And we could just translate that to everything. Like, if you want this, don't go here and do that.
I think often maybe with relationships, people go to the place thinking maybe one day they'll have it on the menu.
One day they'll ask for it enough and randomly KFC will put it on the menu. But no, that's not how it works.
Yeah. I mean,
KFC's brand is chicken. They're not going to start slinging beef.
No, they won't. Maybe in the back kitchen and it'll be on the news and, maybe people will be selling dick out of the drive-through window.
Yeah, when I said slinging beef, I totally cringed because I'm like, oh, that just sounds bad.
I saw the look on your face.
Yeah, no,
so I had to capitalize on it.
It's just like a teeth-grinding look.
Yeah. I guess the loneliness probably stems from not being able to like fully express like every facet of your being.
Yeah. No, I think that is exactly right. And I do think that it's impossible for someone to know, like, because we can't be in each other's brains. Like, it's really hard to understand every facet of like a person that you're interacting with. That's not to say you shouldn't maybe try, like, I think that if you can really respect like the variety and the diversity of people and like really actively try to understand where people are coming from and like build that empathy and compassion, like we should always be doing that. But I think we're always just there's always going to be an element of loneliness in our lives unless we're like putting it all out there at all times, which is impossible and impractical.
It definitely is because it's a lot of work.
Yeah. Like to put yourself out there.
Yeah, it is a lot of work, and you can only do like so little bit of it at a time. You could still live honestly, and I think there's a difference between editing and censoring. So
yes, definitely.
So for instance, you look at like a comic book, and Spider-Man doesn't need to be X-rated. He doesn't have to be, just like bust. You don't have to see like the panels of him like just busting nuts in the bathroom.
He's also a teenager, so I wouldn't want to see that.
Right, and like you don't need to see like blood and guts and all that stuff. So Spider-Man in and of itself is not a censored story; it's an edited story.
Yes.
So you're only editing certain parts and seeing certain parts of the story. And there's very few movies I've seen where like people just openly go to take a shit or just go to take a piss. you know.
Yeah. Well, I was actually thinking of that same example of, like, you never see someone go to a bathroom in a TV show unless it's, like, like something's going to happen in the bathroom or whatever.
Yeah, like in Dumb and Dumber, the toilet breaks and like hijinks ensue, as the tagline says. But
I've never seen Dumb and Dumber.
No, it's pretty. Well, the first one was pretty funny. It came out in 1994, I believe.
I was like a year old.
Oh God, I always forget how old like the youth is. Or like because I don't see you as 25.
I agree. Actually, I have this with like all of my. Oh my God, yeah. All of my best friends are older than me.
Dude.
Like, all of them. It's like, it's always, and they always like, I even remember in high school, like, so they're all, Kat is a year older than me, everyone else is 2 years older than me. So, I remember when they were seniors and they graduated, I came back the next year as a junior, and people were like, "We thought you were a senior. Why are you here?" And I was like, "Oh no, I'm a junior. I'm like 2 years younger than everybody or whatever." I even like got taken to prom as a sophomore with like their group and got to go like prom with them or whatever. So I've always just hung out with people and like found that, and I think that I think it's because I'm like I don't know. I think it's just because I'm like, I'm not even really a president dominant being within like contemporary youth culture, if that makes sense. Like we were talking before the podcast, like Drake, I don't listen to like popular music like ever. Like I like God's Plan and but like he's got that one Kiki, Do You Love Me? And like, that's a good song, but like, I'm not like, I've never even listened to like an album by Chance the Rapper. Like the latest I got was like listening to Childish Gambino a couple months ago. Like I'm not really in there. I also am not like, I'm a pretty, would you describe me as being an old soul?
No.
Interesting. What would you describe me as? Why do you think that you don't think of me as 25? Because you're 31.
It's my own perception, and I think it's because you're willing to explore everything that I throw out there. Even if it's, like, so for instance, if I say, like, that's the bomb, you understand that, even though that wasn't necessarily a reference or slang that you used in your youth.
Yeah.
But, I think it's because I'm tofu to where I'm able to see past certain things. Like, even my friends who are the same age, if not a little bit older than me, they just have different life circumstances. Mm-hmm. So, like, one of my best friends has a kid, but he's still the guy I'm like, how's that cock doing? Like, I could just text him that, and he's just like, oh, it's doing quite well. It's, it's ready to be, it's ready to take a hatchet to it. Like what? But I understand exactly what he's saying. And he's got a kid, and he's a grown man, and he's an adult.
See, like, that's what so two of my good friends, well, one of my best friends and another good friend, like, family friend, are pregnant. And I'm like, how am I going to interact with you now that you have a baby? Well, I guess probably not any different.
Yeah. I mean, well, again, define, because whenever I hear the term old soul, I mean, I always think of like, you're stuck
like traditionalites?
You're traditional and you're not within this generation.
I've always been, I've been told that I have like a lot of wisdom and awareness for someone my age. But I don't know if that's, again, because I've never been inside another person's head. I don't know if that's true or not. But I think I don't know, because wisdom comes from experience, and I'm only 25, and I have had experiences, but like, I don't think any more or less than like another person my age, maybe even less potentially, like, who knows? I don't know. I just always like have been able to like converse and like get along with people, like really of all ages, but like all of my friends are older than me.
So I think you're very much where you are at within your age. It's just, I think perhaps you have leaned more towards the professional side because that has been your pursuit of work the past few years, and you're kind of coming into this newfound acceptance of who you really are, and you're kind of taking back your youth.
That is so true. Like I actually remember having a conversation with someone I worked with who is my age, but she worked, she has like a year more of teaching under her belt than I do, or 2 years. And, she was telling me that she just like threw out all of her crop tops like this summer. And I was like, oh my God, I'm like just now buying crop tops. Or like, I never was like into like look fashion or looking like stylish or having a personal sense of style or whatever until like a year ago. Like, I'm just now reclaiming my youth, and like, fact of the matter is that like at the age of 25, you can still completely fuck up your life and you have time to rebuild it. And that's what I'm banking on.
That's the quarter life crisis. That's the dawning of the soul. And I don't know a person who has not hit a sort of a new bottom in their mid-20s.
Really? So you think that like the sense of being, sense of self, the soul emerging happens during the quarter life crisis or around it?
Yeah, it's kind of like chicken pox round 2. It's like emotional chicken pox. Like, you have to get it out of your system in your mid-20s, or else it's going to come and catch up to you real hard in like your later adult years.
Then you'll get shingles and you'll die.
Yeah, and so it happened to me. Like, there's not one person I know that like had a nice mid-20s experience.
I don't know if I like that. I don't know if I like the sound of that, because I like my mid-20s thus far. It's just kind of like, I don't know. I really like when I was little, I just wanted to be an adult so I could do whatever the fuck I wanted and like make money and live my fucking life. And that's what I'm doing now. Not that I didn't love college and learning, but I love the fact that like I make my money. I can do what I want with my money. I can do what I want with my time. Like, I fucking love it. Like, 25's been better than 24 thus far. We've been 25 for 4 months now. 4 months. 3 months. 3 months.
I would say you had a little bit of a taste of it, but it wasn't as worse as it probably could have been.
Yeah.
Within the last year, like there was I did see a little bit of an existential crisis that was necessary.
Oh yeah, no. Well, I'm still like, I don't want to say I'm in it because I like know what I need to do. Like I am. Yeah, I like totally still have existential dread like all the time. Like literally, dilapidating, like, is that the word I was looking for?
Let's go with it.
Just crippling to the point that I can't leave my couch because I'm overthinking things. Like, that level. I have that, like, at least once a month of, like, what the fuck are you doing with your life? Do you really want to be doing this? Is life really worth living? What the fuck?
Oh.
Like, that's, like, always happening in my brain.
And what might happen is, like, your external circumstances might catch up with your thoughts and mirror them.
Oh, that's law of attraction right there. Of like, whatever you're thinking's gonna come out. Whatever you're thinking's gonna come back to you. So if you're like, life is shitty, or I'm worried about this, or I'm worried about that, like, you're gonna be handed that.
Yeah. God, dude. But I'd say you're doing pretty good so far.
Thanks, dude.
But you got 2 more years left.
So what?
Until like that hump is over, and then like you're in the clear to be like, oh, you're 28 now. You're fine. You're in smooth sailing.
That's 3 years from now.
Yeah.
I it's better to know thyself. It's better to go through the dread than to not. Like, I would rather like question everything that I'm doing and like happiness and like fulfillment and what that means for me than to just never question it. It's kind of like how I think about like God, in the sense of like, if there's a God and he's given us all these faculties to think and reason for ourselves, he would be elated that we're actively trying to consider, is there a God? Does he exist? What does he want us to do? Blah, blah, blah. Because we're using all the faculties he bequeathed upon us.
Yeah. I mean, we gotta say, it's like some dude with a beard, like, up in the sky. It's so complicated, dude. And at least the human condition is born with, like, we have to suffer, and we are. Like, every last person here is suffering.
Well, I think that there's definitely like, yeah, like, life is suffering, but you decide where and when the suffering ends. You know what I mean? Like, I think that there's circumstances that you can't get yourself out of, and maybe those are circumstances where you can't get through the suffering or whatever. But I also know that there's many times where people are suffering when they don't have to be, or they're suffering because they perceive the situation as they see themselves as powerless, or they can't change, or they can't do X, Y, when in reality they could. I think that's a thing too. And that just like, if you accept that, like, life is going to throw you contrasts and suffering or bad things your way, and you have to navigate them. Like, just, that's life. You accept it. Like, rather than, like, wasting all my energy on, like, oh my God, life is suffering. This life is so horrible. This life is so hard, blah, blah, blah. Like, all right, pause. Have that moment. Now, how can you make yourself feel better and have, like, because, like, life is too short to fucking hate it all the time. You know what I mean?
It's very easy to hate it, too.
It is easy to hate it. But at the same time, there's so much good, too. You just have to look for it.
I think loneliness expedites that feeling towards resentment.
I think you're right. Because when you feel completely alone, not understood, not getting what you want, you definitely are in that space of just, like, the building resentment against life and, like, what it's given you, or, like, all the hardships you've had to go through. Like, you just get mad.
And it's a slow drip process, too, to where, maybe you feel a little hint of loneliness, like, after a relationship ends. Or even while you're in the relationship, you're like, fuck, I was supposed to be happy, but I'm not. But then over time, what you really start to do is you start to hate people.
Yeah.
And then you start to expect not to have anything good happen to you.
Well, yeah. And if you expect that nothing good will happen, you'll fulfill that in your brain. You know what I mean? Like, if you don't expect to be happy or to have a good life, you won't. Like, it's really, like, it's kind of like looking through the world through different, like, lenses. Like, if I put this lens on of, like, grief and sadness and suffering, that's all I'll see. But if I switch the lens into happiness and joy and looking for those, it's not that the suffering doesn't exist. It's still there, but it's not highlighted like the other stuff is. It's kind of like, what do you choose to give your attention to? The bad shit? Or let's say you're given a problem. Something happens in your life. What do you spend more time on? Hating and suffering and sitting in the angst of the problem, or forming the solution? It's like, I feel like it's that, like, there needs to be that switch. And, like, it's hard too, because, like, that's not true of every situation. There's people in, like, abusive situations that are, like, suffering needlessly, and to say, like, haphazardly, like, well, just leave the relationships, just do this, just do that. Like, that's kind of flippant and horrible. Like, there's some situations where you can't do that, or the person, it's much more complex than that. But, and it's also saying that, oh, if you're in an abusive relationship, just focus on the happy things in life. I'm not saying that. But I do think there's some truth that, like, if life is suffering and life is so horrible and that's what you think of it, that's all you're gonna get. Right? You're like yes and no.
I am like yes and no. More yes, because hell, like, even my change of perception over the past year has really improved my life and just my circumstances and my creativity and my optimism. I still have sparks of, like, depression, like, coming in every once in a while.
Oh, yeah.
But I think there's not a viable solution. Like, it's weird because, like, that's a very simple solution. It is the right solution. I just wish that was more of a practical solution that people could just, apply, because it's very abstract, because everybody's situation is different. Yes. So, for instance, like, let's just say, maybe you have a disease, you're like, or maybe, like, a loved one has cancer, or let's just say that you have a child and they got into, like, massive trouble. So changing the perspective, it does help orient your life back on track, but I don't think that... perhaps I think what that does is it prepares you for the inevitable. That prepares you for the suffering. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, we are going to experience some fucked up shit. So, as good as I think my life is now, it could get a hell of a lot worse even today.
Yeah. And I don't think it's not right to say that, like, we all won't experience, like, hardships that we don't anticipate. But I think that at the end of the day, it really says something about a person with how they go from that situation. Like, how do they rise above? How do they do better or whatever? Like, how do they, rather than, I think that, like, for me at least, I think I've just like, it's been so easy for me to sit in like anguish and depression and sadness. And it is really hard to like reach for a better feeling and to like try to make a dark situation like a learning experience or like whatever that may be. Like, it's fucking hard. It's almost like reprogramming your fucking brain. Like in the same way that like I talked so shittily to myself for God since 8 to now about like body and whatever, like reprogramming my brain to look in the mirror and the first thought isn't ugh, like that's fucking hard. But at the same time, like I think that we still have to like fight for like looking for the good and like fighting to keep seeing that and keep finding the joy and pursuing it, like because there's no doubt about it that the bad things happen to good people, but how are you gonna deal with it?
Through all of that, have you ever felt lonely even during the process?
Oh, for sure. Even like me talking about like a lot of the like hippy dippy shit that I like am practicing of like looking for joy and like looking for happiness, because I think that like if I want to be happy, then I have to be happy. If I want happiness, if I want the things that I want, I have to do things. I have to just, you know, I have to like pursue them. I have to make them happen. I can't just sit on my butt and say, recording contract, album release, touring, blah, blah, blah. Like I can't just sit there and do it. But even that being said, like there's definitely people in my life who like, there's people in life who don't want to pursue the happiness and don't want to pursue the goodness and they want to sit in the anguish or they want to sit in those things. And like, that's up to them. And honestly, I really don't, this is one thing I do feel lonely in too. I can't really tell people about like the hippy dippy shit that I like believe in. Like the, like, you know, like the importance that like meditation and like journaling is to me, that is like part of my self-care, and that like, I almost feel lonely in like there's people in my life who'd rather sit in depression and sadness than like trying to be happy. And I've just come into trying to be happy. I'm trying now. I'm just actively like trying to pursue happiness. And there's people in my life who do not want that. And it's really hard because I look at them and I'm like, your life is good. Like, you know, there's always things that aren't perfect. Like that's the nature of life. But like, you know, it's hard because almost like sometimes like it brings me down, but then I have to be like, you know what, that's them. Like I shouldn't internalize like what they're going through or feel bad because like it doesn't serve anybody. So.
You know Futurama, right?
I do.
Okay, I don't know the main guy. What's his name? The main character, like who?
Fry.
Fry. There was an episode where Fry tries to think back to what happened to his dog. And
what?
Like, did you've probably seen this episode?
Okay.
So he's trying to figure out like what happened to his dog, and you know, like the dog lived 12 years after he got frozen or whatever happened.
Yeah, he got frozen.
And then they like, you know, there's like, oh, that dog probably went on to go do other things. And then like the very end of the episode, the dog just waited for Fry at the same exact spot for 12 years.
Oh.
And it's this montage where the dog is just like sitting by like the bus stop and the bench, and there's a store behind him, and the store changes and the seasons change, and then like every single year the dog gets like a little older, a little more like mangy and dirty, and then like it just keeps going on, and then like you see life happening like around the dog, and then at the very end of the episode, right before the credits hit, the dog just like lays down and like puts his head in his like arms and then closes his eyes, and that's the end of the episode. And I think that is a perfect allegory for loneliness, because when you are in that feeling, life is happening around you.
Yeah.
You know, so he could have went and like, you know, lived on, you know, his life, but I think it's a lot more deeper than that, because you can change your life around you, but you can't necessarily change the feelings. You could only hope that changing your life will actually facilitate the feelings.
Yeah.
So for instance, if you do pursue a relationship with somebody, that you won't be lonely, or perhaps maybe if you find fulfillment in other people and try to live a happy life, that will alleviate the suffering. But that's not the case at all times, because I think at the end of the day, we're faced with the fact that no matter what we do, however great or poorly we do it, we will all meet the same end and turn into dust or turn into worm food or even possibly hamburger meat at the end of all of it. So, some people do have great lives for them.
Yeah.
And then some people have really shitty lives for them.
Yeah.
But I would say that if you the show like Wife Swap, where they swap wives and like they see like how
sadly
it is.
yes,
yeah, they should have like Life Swap.
I think that would breed a lot of empathy and compassion, and also a gratitude for like what you have. Like that's like one thing that like I'm not a religious person, but like the idea of counting your blessings is actually something that we should all really do. Like, and especially from people who are living in like fucking America. Like, really, our lives are, if you make, like, globally speaking, if you make, I think it's over $34,000 a year, you're the 1% of the population of Earth. So, like, seriously, like, count your fucking blessings, like, sometimes. Like, I know that sounds like, that might be hard for some people. Like, some people really will have to struggle to, like, figure out, like, what they think that they're blessed with or whatever. But, like, it's a good exercise. Like... And I know, like, I could see someone being like, well, you're so fucking privileged. Like, it's so easy for you to count your blessings. And it's like, I see your point entirely, but I also know that, like, if you focus if you focus some energy on, like, what you're grateful for and, like, what's awesome about this world and, like, how awesome it is that you're alive right now, like, it feels better. It feels better that way than for me to... Because I've sat on my couch in depression and sadness and angst, and that doesn't feel good. So I'm pursuing better thinking, better thoughts, better feelings. And like, that's, you know what? There's some people in this world, they don't want you to feel good or to be well. They want you to sit in loneliness and fear and sadness. Yeah.
My thing is, I know what you're saying, but I don't want there to be confusion where depression is a choice, but being happier is. So it's like,
that's not it.
So you were actively choosing to sit in your couch and wallow, like, in pain. Like, so you just said, could I be happy or could I be depressed? And then you actively made the decision, and you are responsible for your own depression.
Well, but also, like, I don't have, like, clinical depression. Like, I don't have that. I've had feelings of depression, but I've never, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't have depression, but I felt depressed. Right?
Yeah.
So, like, again, like, counting my blessings, like, I've been able to make the choice. Some people can't. But also, like, let's take the example of, like, depression. Like, there is also times where I'm probably gonna sound like an asshole, but, like, even with depression sometimes, and I know it's, like, debilitating, obviously. I think even there's sometimes choices. I'm not saying always. I'm not saying that they're not hard to make. I'm not saying that it's really fucking hard. But I do think that there's, like, even those people have power. Like, I know that's probably, like, really, like, rude or horrible to say, because there are people who, like, feel entirely powerless from it, and that's probably true, but at the same time, like, I don't know, I think that there's... Maybe that's me just being ableist. That's probably just me being ableist. But a part of me wants to believe that they still have a choice and can, like, pursue treatment or something. Maybe that's me being ableist, optimist, hopeful, dumb. But it's not that depression is a choice. I'm not saying that.
I got you.
Not for all people. Not for all people. Would you agree, though, that there are some people who choose to sit in... I'm not talking about people who are, like, clinically depressed. I'm not talking about that. Like, I'm talking about there's some people in this world who literally sit in sadness and choose that. Not depression, but sadness, maybe? Maybe we can draw that line?
I think you're putting yourself in a position to where you can't sound good.
No, I already know that I don't sound good. I know I don't sound good, but I'm not saying, like, people... But I really do think that there are some people who choose to feel bad. I'm not saying it's, like, every person with depression. I don't think that's correct.
I get what you're saying. I don't think there's no way out of that, though. Like what you're saying.
What I'm saying, there's no way out of it?
You have to change like you have to like get away from depression to get out of that. So, you know what I'm saying? So like,
oh yeah, no. So like what I just said, like, okay, let's not call it depression because that's not right, because that's like a clinical medical thing. So let's call it like sadness. That's different than depression, right? Because depression is not sadness. It's way deeper and way more darker and like all that stuff. Like, again, that debilitating nature. But there's people who do sit in sadness and angst, or like they wallow in it and they don't choose to feel better. Right?
Yeah, let's go with that.
Yeah. So like, we'll take the depression element out of it, because you're right. Like, I'm not talking about people who have depression. I'm talking about people who choose to sit in like sadness or whatever, which is different in my brain. Okay.
So I think it's probably like it's not necessarily like choosing to sit with a negative emotion. It's the fact that it's the lack of making choice.
No, yeah, I guess. It's kind of like, there's nothing wrong with feeling sad, but what do you do after? Right?
Yeah.
Like, do you choose to just sit in it, or do you choose to try and make yourself feel better, or try to solve the problem? You know what I mean?
Right.
That's what I mean. Again, not talking about people with depression.
Okay. Because
no, you were like, oh, this fucking bitch thinks that like depression's a fucking choice. No, I don't think that at all.
I wasn't thinking fucking bitch.
Well, I am. So.
No, I mean, I was just thinking like, I don't know where you're going with this if you stick within the world of depression.
No. Yeah, no, it's not. Yeah, no, that was poor word choice on my part. No, I'm talking about people who choose to sit in sadness. I'm not talking people with depression.
So,
because that's like a literal like, that's like a mental emotional thing, versus the people who like just sit in sadness, who don't have depression.
So I'm wondering like if there's like a slight implication that it's easy to just do, like it's an easy fix to get out of, yet they're making it so difficult to make the choice.
Well, I don't think that's the case with people with depression. Like, I don't think that's the case. That like, I would not be so bold as to be like, you're just choosing to be depressed. Not with people with depression. But that being said, I do know there are people in this world who choose to be unhappy. Maybe that's a better word for it. Let's completely get away from the whole depression word. There's people who choose to be unhappy and sad and frustrated with their life than trying to make it better. That's like, dude, you have like all the power in your hands. Like even if you're in a situation that sucks, like you can change your mindset or like do things that make you feel better or work towards, trying to alleviate them,
So how does this cure loneliness, though?
It cures loneliness because you're only lonely if you think you're lonely.
So, like, loneliness, like, so you're saying, like, there's not a universal towards the feeling of loneliness. I think that,
like we said, everyone feels like we can't fully know each other. So there's always this element of, like, there's parts of me that are, like, unique and different that no one understands. And in that way, I'm alone. But there's also, like, if you are sitting in your loneliness and you spend all your energy on thinking about how lonely you are versus spending that energy towards feeling better, like that's like wasting your experience, in my opinion.
I gotcha. I think what you said earlier, before we switched tracks, like on the depression field, was like a very like kind of religious message.
In what way?
In a way that, like, just like looking at like the overall messages of religion, saying that like life is suffering, and what you do is you just, you carry your cross and bear it, and then that's one sect of religion. I mean, like Buddhism is all based around, life is suffering, and you have to like kind of accept it and move on. Like Buddha did asceticism, and that didn't work. He made his suffering worse and tried to rise above it, and that didn't help him reach enlightenment. He went through the middle path. You know what I mean? Yeah.
So like if we just accept that life is suffering and life is pain, then we can focus on the good? I don't know.
Well, I think there is a lot of truth to that, because it does take a lot of work to just get yourself out of the negative feelings. And I do agree. I mean, despite me questioning you for the past 20 minutes, I just kind of wanted to like pick your brain more as opposed to like refute what you're saying. I think it's a change of perception that does help alleviate the suffering. Because that has personally worked for me, and I know that's worked for you. At least from what I can tell over the past year.
Yeah, no. I've literally, like, chosen to feel better and work towards the things that I want rather than sitting in my upsetness. Like, that's what I mean. Like, and again, it's a very different experience than what I'm having if you have clinical depression or anything like that. I'm not even talking about that.
So pretty much, let's take loneliness and make it into something tangible.
Okay.
Let's equate it to shit.
Okay. Why does it always come back to poop?
That's what I have in my heart.
You got just shit in your heart.
Got shit in my heart and shit on my mind. So one of the big misconceptions that I don't like is pigs are filthy animals.
That's wrong.
So for instance, you ask why? Well, a pig rolls around in its own shit. And the only truth to that is it's because they have a home where all they are walking and sleeping on is shit.
Like, you put them in a pen where they can only live in their own shit.
Yeah, it's not like if you domesticate a pig and, you know, like you give it a good life and you kind of, let's just say, like, treat it like a dog where you give the dog, like, the bed and treat it and you train it and just a happy pig. The pig just wouldn't be like, oh, man, I'm going to take a fucking big stinky pig dump right now and then just roll around in it.
Yeah, no, pigs don't think that. No. But but people put them in pens where they have to, or like the fucking sow pens where they're separated from their babies and they can only be on their side and give them milk and ugh.
Yeah, I mean every pig I've interacted with smelled like shit because I went to the pig's house and they live in pure shit.
Yeah,
and they're rolling around in it.
Yeah, and like yes, I agree. And pigs are also as smart as dogs.
They and in some cases smarter because they can like learn faster and they're cute as fuck. And I actually love
pigs too.
I follow an Instagram page called Oink Oink Mini Pigs, and it's just like baby pigs being baby pigs.
Do you know that my friend Kat has a mini pig?
I got to meet your friend Kat.
You got to meet your friend Kat. Her pig Eclair. She's a teacup pig. She's quite the thing to behold.
One of my friends years ago, she was into dream analysis, and we were hanging out one day at her apartment, and she told me something that always stuck with me. And I told her I had a dream that I was just playing with a little baby pig, and that was it. It was just the dream, and I was just like kind of like sitting down on the ground, you know, with my legs out, and the pig was running up to me, and like that was the whole dream.
Aww.
And then I haven't researched any dream interpretation since then, but she said, well, in that dream, you're actually the little baby pig. Like, you're like, there's this like little playful side like within you that's trying to get out. Aww. Like that baby pig, because your life has been really dark as of late. And this is years ago. Okay. This is maybe 2 years ago. When, like, I really was like on the cusp of like the peak of my depression, especially last year. So she's like, you gotta, you know, try to be more like that baby pig. And it always, you know, stuck with me. Which always bothered me is when you look at a pig as a dirty animal because it rolls around in its own shit. Yeah. So if loneliness is an actual piece of shit, then that's kind of saying like I'm choosing to roll around in it. But I think that in everybody's home, loneliness is part of it. And what you're essentially doing is distracting yourself. So you are going like there. I do agree with you, and there is something great and freeing about making your life better because most people are capable of doing that. They do have the tools. There's some people who are doomed because what they're doing is they're trying to be more filled with malice, and they're looking at the world through a vengeful lens, and they see people as kind of a cancer on the earth, and that's a very, very dark place to be in. Yeah. And but
if you don't want to look at the good things, you won't.
So going back to the religious aspect, I think God was the one that put that into humanity and into home. So, like, even with Adam and Eve, like, they were stricken from the hells, and it's not utopia, but paradise. They were thrown from paradise, and then they realized they were naked, and they were afraid and very vulnerable, and that's a very, like, dark message with life. So I think at the end of the day, we have this eternal loneliness that I think a lot of people will see us as a dirty animal because we are rolling around in it. Because I think in my life, if I did have a girlfriend or even like a wife in the future with children, I still think that I would be distracted from loneliness, but not, free of it.
No, it's still there. Like, the loneliness is still there, but are you going to choose, like, it's like that ever-present battle of, are you going to look at the good things or the bad things? Are you going to choose to, like, focus on X or Y, and that will shape your perception of life? And, like, sure, things will still happen, but you can always, like, make it somewhat better by changing your perspective on it. Like, and again, yeah, I'm not talking about people with depression, like, but there's literally people in this world who choose unhappiness and sadness or anger or vengefulness, like you said, and, like, rather than seeing that, like, you have the power to change, like, how you feel towards life or whatever. Or, like, hey, if you're sad about something, what is making you sad? What can you change about it? Like, serenity prayer. Like, what do you have the power to change? Like, try to change it. Like, and it's hard because I think that there is sometimes, like, I've been there, like, sometimes you just choose to sit in that feeling or whatever. But again, different experience. I've never been diagnosed with depression. I don't have depression. I've been had periods of feeling depressed, but never, like, been diagnosed. So, because that's like different entirely. That's just, like, a whole different thing. Whole different animal.
I think perhaps because we are more creative and artists at heart, that we're going to have a different take on loneliness and experience it perhaps even deeper than somebody who's more mechanically minded, like math and sciencey, because they could possibly find they don't really think they're lonely because they're perhaps extroverted and, like, they're with people, or they take solace in their work and they don't just have it's still there, that loneliness, because it could be taken away from them.
Yeah.
Like I think, like, physically, and I think even emotionally too, because when you do talk with certain people, and, like, you do long to make that connection with somebody.
Yeah.
And you do want to, like, be felt and heard, and just kind of have this euphoric feeling from when you do have a conversation with someone that's so uplifting you lose track of time.
Yep.
I feel like our conversations are very much like that, because once you are reminded of time, that's when you're reminded of life.
Yep.
So it's kind of like being bored. When you're bored at work, you're like, fuck, I can't wait until it's 3:00. It is 2:30 now.
That's loneliness. Loneliness is like, oh my God, it's like the same thing of, like, oh my God, I'm so lonely. I can't wait to have somebody else because blah, blah, blah. And that's, like, also, like, the biggest, like, kind of fallacy ever is, like, when X happens, I'll be happy. Like, that's like, no. Like, you're setting yourself up for, like, disappointment. Like, any person who's ever lost weight will tell you that, like, believing that you'll all of a sudden be happier 20 pounds less from now, that's not true. That, that's not it. Are things better for you? Oh my God, yeah. But does that equal happiness, losing 20 pounds? God, no.
I would say the path towards that goal equals the happiness as opposed to the result.
Yeah, well, but think about that. Like, when you're on the path, you're, like, choosing, you're actively pursuing and walking towards the thing that you want. And of course that feels good. But just, like, if you just, like, that's not to say that, like, happiness is guaranteed once you lose 20 pounds. Like, happiness is in your head, kind of. That's part of the perception.
Yeah, it's the pathway there, because if you're going on a walk with somebody, the highlight of the walk isn't as soon as you step out of the car or when you get back in it. It's that literal, like, path the entire time. Or any activity that you're doing, like if you're playing baseball, it's not the fucking score at the end of the game. Yeah. I mean, obviously, gambling, World Series, all that. But the act of, like, losing yourself within time. And I think loneliness is kind of almost, I don't want to say prerequisite, I just can't find the word right now.
Yeah.
But it's almost always a given that it reminds you of your time on this earth.
Yeah. Well, when you're lonely, you're just thinking about what you don't have, or what you don't, what's not in your grasp, right?
Right. Well, you could still be lonely. Like, I hate to use him as an example, but Robin Williams, a guy who was apparently, seemingly on paper has been loved and revered, loved and honored and cherished by his peers, family, friends, and he's pulled so many people out of depression with his comedy, and he had $1 million and was successful, and at the end of the day he felt lonely. So what I'm saying? So how it'll always be, I think, an attempt to escape loneliness. So loneliness is never that path where you're about to get out of the car and where you get back in. You're always walking that path, and of course you're going to see things along the way to distract you. At least that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
And I think it's essential with life to make your life better, and everybody does have the capability. Mm-hmm. Some people's lives, their home is just filled with shit, mm-hmm. and they have no other they can't help but sleep in a bed that has shit around there.
Yeah.
Could they get out? There's a chance, but I don't think that everybody will achieve happiness as soon as they get out of it, because what's happiness after you get out of if you're trapped in a deep dark hole, what do you do after you get out? All right, now you got to go find shelter. You got to get to safety and then restart your shit. So it's always this constant circle, and I think at least with loneliness, we're always going to be on that path. Mm-hmm. No matter what we do, we can't escape it. So we can be distracted from it, and it's really part of our being. I don't study animals, but I highly doubt frogs or mice are just dude, fuck,
I need a mate.
Or not even that, or just even if there's a penguin with another
a deranged penguin.
Still the deranged penguin runs for the mountains.
The deranged penguin runs for the mountains, and it doesn't have a conception of loneliness. It doesn't think that. The deranged penguin is on its mission. It has no time for loneliness because it is lonely.
Yeah, he chose to make his life over. The deranged penguin.
But why?
So, I think what detracts from loneliness, kind of going back to what you were saying earlier, is a lot of people's decisions to have an outlook on life that brings more harm than good.
Yes. And there's people who actively choose to do more harm to themselves than to try to push for a better feeling.
Yeah, and it's a lot easier to feel. There's some people who just hate their family members, and their family members would outcast them had they revealed their true selves. And I'm not saying that's what that's like with me at all. Definitely not. But there are people who, can't wait to just get out of home, and they're still very young people. It's just that kind of feeling of eternal loneliness, where they're able to just go someplace and to be their complete self.
Yeah.
There's still that
and there's definitely times where it's so fucking hard and it feels impossible to get to that point of you're in a bad situation and you're how the hell am I supposed to feel good about this? How the hell am I supposed to reach for a better, feeling where I'm at right now? There's always going to be times like that. And I think the example that you gave of the person at home who can't be their true self, it's very easy for them to think once I get out of my house, I will be happy or I'll be not lonely anymore and I can be myself. But I don't think that's true. You'll always have those memories and those thoughts and feelings about when you were at that house. Those still exist. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I have feelings about when I was in a bad living situation. I was miserable. I was felt horrible. I felt like there was no way out. So I know how that feels. And if someone had told me at the time, well, how can you make yourself feel better? What can you do to I probably would tell them to fuck off. But seriously, what can you do in the time that you have there to learn from it, to grow, or whatever it is, so that when you leave, you can go out and, because that example you gave too of what do you do when you crawl out of a dark hole? It's allegory of the cave. The people who are taken out of the cave and look at a tree for the first time. First off, they're in sunlight for the first time, so they're blinded and shielding their eyes, and everything that they know or thought is crashed around them and completely changed.
I definitely agree. I am right now doing something I've never done on this podcast, and I'm looking through my phone. But it's only because I wanted to read a quote that I read last night from The Rock. It's a video of The Rock standing in front of a television screen. And what he's doing is he's looking over a football field, of the football field that he used to play on. And he wanted to be, in the NFL. He wanted to be in an NFL so bad. And then he still, like, the coach that cut him from the team was on the TV screen. So he said he was always the hardest worker in the locker room and did everything I could to make the CFL and then hopefully make it to the NFL, where I dreamed of having an all-pro / Super Bowl champion football career. Instead, I was cut from the team, told I wasn't good enough, and sent home with $7 to my name. After years of blood, sweat, guts, tears, my dream was over. Fell into depression, didn't know what to do or where to turn. Eventually, I picked myself back up again and said, fuck this, and refocused and committed myself to a different path. The rest is history. I've been there, so I encourage you to keep working hard and remember that sometimes our dreams don't have to come true, can ultimately become the best thing that never happened.
Exactly. That's what I mean. Like,
yeah.
That is exactly what I mean. Thank you, Mr. Rock. Like, you said it perfectly.
Yeah. So, The Rock knows what's going on. But what if The Rock just said, yeah, I feel lonely sometimes?
I think The Rock feels lonely sometimes. That's part of the human condition.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
That's what I said. I'm saying loneliness is there, but you have the power to focus on the loneliness or focus on better things.
Right. So you can never escape loneliness.
No.
Is what you're saying.
Never. It's part of the human condition. I'm as hippy dippy as I can be. I understand that. Like, life is suffering. Life is pain. There is loneliness. There is death. There is destruction. But you can choose to look at that, or you can look... I mean, you should know it's there, but focus on other things. Like he said, he got to a point where he said, fuck this. And that's what I want to impart sometimes, is like, you have to, the person needs to reach that point of fuck this, and they do something else.
Yeah. And The Rock also said, sometimes you just all cried out.
Yeah. And The Rock also said, how do you feel?
What?
It doesn't matter how you feel!
He did say that. So if there's anything that we could live to strive for, it's to be more like The Rock.
Yes, in all ways, really.
Yeah.
In all ways.
Exactly. Another one of my favorite quotes The Rock said was, the only thing The Rock has never done is make a white baby. He said that on live TV in WD. He was a heel at the time. He was the bad guy, and you're supposed to hate him. And he said that, and everyone was just dying laughing in like the crowd, and they were just clapping like, "Okay, we like you. You're fine now." So,
I think we can all like really just strive to be The Rock and improve our life experience.
Yeah, I never want to make a white baby.
I think it's always going to be part white, isn't it? Like The Rock is he Samoan?
He's black and Samoan.
Black and Samoan. So if he had a baby with a white lady, it'll have some white in it.
See, in your case, you can't escape that.
I can't escape it. No, my baby's always gonna be a part white.
But my wife could cheat on me, and then and then I'll feel really lonely after that.
Your baby will feel lonely because it was the product of a affair.
Yeah, but then I'd still love the kid.
Yeah, as you should.
Yeah,
it's like there was some movie or TV show, and the kid was clearly not the father's, but he loved it anyway.
Me, Myself, and Irene with Jim Carrey. His wife...
I've never seen that movie.
Jim Carrey's wife. Like, he plays this very passive, kind of docile Rhode Island state trooper. Mm-hmm. And then he marries a woman, and the woman has an affair with a black midget. And then during the birth, and I think the midget was the limo driver or something, or like drove a cab. I can't remember. But then, like when the kids were born, all three children were born black and brilliant. And then there was like a family like party, And so then like Jim Carrey, like they're all playing in the pool, like everyone around is white, and then there's 3 black children. He's like, "Yo, those are my sons." And then he's like, "Yeah." And then his friend comes up to him at the grill, and he's whispering him, and he just says, "Hey, I can't remember his name, like Hank, I think his name. No, Hank is the schizo's name. Charlie. Let's just say Charlie. Mm-hmm. Hey, Charlie, don't you know those kids' dicks are bigger than those sausages?" You know,
Ew.
so because he was grilling sausages on the,
Ew.
but yeah, so I don't know where I'm going with that, but
the only way we could end this more offensively, as I at one point was saying, and unintentionally, that people can choose or not choose depression. And then you said that, and then the only way we could end it more offensively is if we talk about the song in where Kim Jong-il sings "I'm So Lonely," that puppet movie.
Yeah, Team America.
Yeah, that's mega racist. That's the only way we could end this, like the cherry on top of offensiveness is we talk about that.
Well, I mean,
Kim Jong-il didn't have a lonely life. He was weighted on hand and foot. I'm pretty sure he had his wife killed. Or something. Or I think actually Kim Jong-un might have killed his wife's family or something like that. That lady's probably really lonely.
She's really dead. Probably.
Oh, R.I.P. Also, when you were saying the stuff about The Rock, I was like, I sincerely hope between when we record this and when this comes out, he doesn't have a Me Too moment.
Oh God!
Oh, yeah.
They take all my heroes now.
Just stop liking men.
Oh no, that's not a good place to be.
No, I agree.
But I guess don't judge other people's loneliness based on a circumstance you think is good.
Yes.
And just because you're rolling around in shit doesn't mean that you're a filthy animal.
Yes.
Just means that your bed is made out of shit.
A flawed premise is that if it's good for you, it's good for another person.
Yes.
So don't tell them how to be. Don't tell them how to act. Let them be. You do your thing. Choose happiness, brah.
Yeah, dude.
All right, so this was Coffee and Catastrophe with Brent and Gabi. You can like us on Facebook at Coffee and Catastrophe. We're on Twitter at CCWBG. And you can listen to us on iTunes or our website at coffeeandcatastrophe.com. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, leave a review, all that good stuff.
Yep, and then just keep on sucking that cock, boy. You guys take care of yourselves and be good to each other.
Ugh, bye.